welcome back to another episode of Beating Alpha. This is episode 101, and we have Ola Dantis. A little bit about him, a little bit of background, what he does, the things that he's working on. Again, today is all about multifamily investing. So if you're looking for that type of knowledge, strategies, tips, it's going to be a great episode for you. So keep watching. So he's the founder at dwelling.com, a multifamily investment syndication firm who has successfully sourced deals of over $40 million by working closely with sellers and with other apartment syndicators across the country. Ola has only lived in the US for a few years, but successfully completed rehab projects in excess of $1 million. Ola continues to exceed investor returns, building upon his success on real estate investing space. Ola likes to post his progress and encourages his community of over more than 45,000 strong Instagram community. So definitely we can talk about that, how you build that. Recently, Ola via Dwelling closed 160 units apartment building in Houston, Texas, and another 104 units also in Texas. Ola continues to meet or exceed investors' returns by investing in value-add deals in strong metropolitan cities across the United States. And another few things to mention, he enjoys working with new investors, both here and abroad, to help them become successful real estate investors. His firm gives back to Dwelling One House Pledge, which is an initiative to donate a house to a family for Christmas. Awesome, starting in Baltimore. In addition to his recent trip to the Philippines and Bali, Ola visited slums and is now working on a local initiative to help people in need. So as I mentioned here, this is his why, to give back to those communities. So that is cool. It's going to be a cool, fun show. So thanks for joining me today, Ola. Appreciate it.
No, Matthias, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
That's no problem. No problem. Happy to connect. Listen, so can we talk about your journey? Because prior to the interview, before we started, he was like, hey, I have a family. I'm coming across from UK. I have a family in Dublin. So anybody who's watching, maybe your uncle, your uncle is watching. So shout out to him if he's watching in Dublin.
Yeah.
Same country. So can you talk about your personal journey? I mean, how did you ended up being in States, and how have you discovered real estate investing?
Yeah, it's a long story. I'm going to try to make it as short as I can. So basically, I like to say this. I was born in Nigeria, West Africa. So anybody from that part of the world, shout out if you're watching this as well.
Yeah.
But I moved to the UK when I was young, about 16. Lived in the UK, loved the UK so much. Lived there for another 10 or so years, and then kind of went back actually to Nigeria for a bit. Then my wife was Filipino, also in the UK. Basically did an internship in the US. And she told me to come visit. Like, hey, I think you're gonna love it. She was in Disneyland in Florida, Orlando, Florida. So I jumped on the plane, went to Florida, and I was like, I could vividly remember this. I was, just about to land in Florida, and I was looking. I'm a window seat guy, right? So I was looking down, and I was like, I saw the suburbs, kind of really symmetrical and green and beautiful. I was like, oh my god, it is really nice, yeah, And then obviously we landed, spent some time in Florida, really liked it, a lot. And then, a couple of years or so later, my wife was like, maybe we should move, right? Because we kind of graduated during the recession, and it was like get a job anyway. So we're like, oh, maybe this is time to try something different. So we moved to America, settled a little bit, got a job. She had a job, I had a job. We had a nice fancy apartment in Maryland, Columbia, Maryland at the time. And everything was going great, right? I guess you could say we live in the American dream, right? Which you would assume that was enough. Basically I was like, is this it? Just kind of, go to work, come home, repeat, go to work, come home, traffic, repeat, right? So kind of when I was just kind of contemplating that, a friend of mine from the UK called me and say, hey, Ola, my business is doing really well. Could you meet me? I'm going to Dubai. Meeting some investors there. Could you come and help me with my business? So, two things I could have done was, no, not doing that. But obviously I did what a wise man, should do, I prayed about it and I asked my wife. And my wife was like, I mean, this was, years back, right? Like, have you guys heard of Skype? I mean, it wasn't like Zoom back then. Like, I mean, Zoom was around, but, not like today, right? With everything going on in the world. So, or FaceTime, why do you have to go all the way there? And I was like, hey, maybe if I do go, maybe I'll learn something, right? And the reason I'm telling this story is for folks that are watching and listening is success is never going to come to you, on a platter of gold, right? It's never going to be this big, announcement, right? Success could come to you as a phone call. So you have to be ready to, to be open to those kinds of opportunities without just kind of shutting it out, right? So for me, that was, I would consider one of the pivotal moments in my life that I went, oh, wow, okay. Before you knew it, I was on the plane to Dubai, to meet with my friend. And, it wasn't like I got to Dubai, I was picked up in a golden, Bentley, none of that. We just kind of stayed in a very, standard hotel, and we just was kind of masterminding on my friend's business, right? And I realized, in the UK, he was doing property investing. I was like, oh my goodness, he's doing really well. So obviously on my way back to the United States on the plane, I was like, maybe I could do this in America, right? And obviously I had no idea about real estate or property investing. But when I got back to the US, I just basically, asked my best friend, like, hey, what is real estate? My best friend being Google, right? Google told me everything that I needed to know. And led me to a website called Bigger Pockets. I'm not sure if folks in Ireland know that website. It's essentially a Facebook or, Instagram for real estate investors, right? And, I plugged into their podcast, right? And every single guest, I kind of went from the bottom, right? From the very first podcast, right? And, pretty much heard most of the podcast, and they would say, Rich Dad Poor Dad is the book that really changed their mind. I was like, who is this Rich Dad Poor Dad guy? So I obviously went to my second best friend, Amazon. If you want to be successful, you want to make Amazon your best friend. I read a ton. We'll talk about that later. Anyway, I got the book and I read the book, and I was like, the only way I could describe it is like my brain got an uppercut. Like, oh my goodness, like this guy is basically talking about what I've been trying to articulate to myself. Like, there's gotta be more, right? So after I read that book, I think 2-3 months later, we bought our first building, right? And that was a duplex in Baltimore, Maryland, in a Class A area. And that property went on to be, just a cash cow, right? And that's kind of how we started. But, I also want to kind of say something lastly, so that was kind of my foray into multifamily. But what really happened was, there was just a classic night, right? My wife and I, at home doing what lovers do, cooking, and we got talking, right? And I was just telling her like, hey, we've just bought this, this little duplex in Baltimore. We're living in there. We were living downstairs. We had 2 tenants upstairs, and they're basically paying most of the mortgage. And I was like, babe, like I just have so much money in my account. Like my account I have too much money in my account. Like normally I get money into my account and it goes right out. But this time money is actually staying in my account. I was like, this is really good. If we do this a few more times, I think we're going to have a lot of money. And she was like, me too. I have a lot of money in my account as well, And I'm telling these stories because that epiphany, between my wife and I was just kind of like the moment of, hey, we could do this. Like we could scale, we could make this into a business, right? And that's when we set up dwelling.com. I found a mentor that, is an amazing mentor. He's got, almost $1 billion of assets under management. I know it sounds, crazy to someone. Joe Fellis.
Okay, yeah.
Yep. And basically reached out to him. I heard him on a podcast, and, during that podcast, he was like, I'm going to give my number, and, nobody's going to call me anyway. And obviously I'm nobody. So I called him and I said, hey, Joe, whatever you're charging your students, I cannot afford it. But please, can you give me some kind of payment plan or whatever.
Mm.
And for some reason, at the time, I mean, I don't think he does that anymore. He allowed me, and the reason I'm telling people this is like success is never gonna come wake you up at 4 a.m. or
Yeah.
5 a.m. like I do every morning. Success is not gonna tell you to put on your running shoes and run 3 miles, the morning like I did today. Success is never gonna wake you up and tell you to meditate, right? So you have to do those things. Success is not telling me to call Joe Fellas or look for a mentor and reach out to them, right? So it's all these kind of little, almost inconsequential steps that gets you to where you should be and how you should, be running and living your life.
Hmm. Wow, that's very interesting story, and again, I'm happy that you're sharing that with us at the same time. Again, I have multiple questions in my head right now, but I would like to ask that question first, because would you think it would be possible for you achieve the same type of success if you never moved from UK, to US? Would you think that would be possible
Wow,
for you?
you're the first person that has asked that question on the podcast. And my friend and my partner in the UK, we always have this debate, right? And not to get political with everything going on in the US, politics right now. And I always
Yeah.
tell anybody that wants to listen, America is the best country on the planet. I just came back from Dubai a few weeks ago, and I lived in the UK, and I love the UK. But America is so unique in that this is where I describe America. It's a runway full of snakes, lions, gold, diamonds, frankincense, money. It's on the runway. So when you get on that runway, you have to be very, very good at dodging lions or killing lions, right? If you can, right?
Uh-huh.
Like Samson did in the Bible, not to, bring religion into this. Or if you're very good at killing snakes and you're very good at taking the gold and the money on that same runway, on the same runway, there could be somebody pointing a gun at your head too, but there could also be somebody giving you $1 million. That's how I describe America. Is literally
Wow.
the same country. Listen carefully, guys, where you could have the first black president, and the same country you can have President Trump. That the
Everything,
beauty of
everything is
America.
possible. Everything is possible there.
Exactly. Yeah. So to answer your question, I don't want to dodge the question. I wouldn't have, no. If I don't think I would have. I mean, just the amount of success and the asset we've acquired. Even on a personal note, with my wife and I just doubt. And we can kind of dig into that if you want, just from a pure economic perspective, but also how mortgages work in America and how mortgages work in the UK.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that I cannot be successful in the UK, but in the US, you can buy your first home just by putting 3.5% down of the money.
Yeah.
You can't do that in the UK as of today. I don't know. Maybe there is a program today, but so those are things and that's why I'm saying that. I'm not saying the UK is better. I mean, we have better food in the UK. The quality of life. There's a lot of. But I'm talking from a pure entrepreneurship perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah, nothing beats the US. I mean, China tries, but they can never get to that point in which America is in.
That's very interesting, because you said that. Well, I kind of expected that you're going to answer the way you answered the question, because again, when it comes to the product itself, I mean, like London, like just across like UK, when you look at the properties, Marcus Millichap, or you check, any of the commercial realtors, I mean, there's not a lot going on. So when it comes to the deal flow, it could be really hard for you to find something. And if you find something, I mean, the price is going to be just ridiculous. We're talking, 50 and up, $1 million. And, so the product is not there first place. But the second thing is, again, is the mindset part, which is saying is kind of everybody know you as kind of this entrepreneurship like place where, the dreams can come true. And it sounds like, I mean, it's coming true for you. So if we're talking about the mindset part, I mean, it took you 3 months to acquire your first deal since you grabbed on the Rich Dad Poor Dad book. So can you talk about that? Because I think it's very important for people to understand that it's possible to take action fast instead of studying and, like you always in the books, but you never take action. So how you were able to buy your first deal in 3 months only?
you just gotta be relentless, right? I mean, you just gotta be relentless, right? Everybody thinks, especially in our, I'm a millennial, I'm sure you are too, right? In our age of like social media, and everybody wants to flash and floss on Instagram. Look at me, I'm doing this and doing that. And nobody actually wants to do the work
Hmm.
because it's not fun. Doesn't get likes. Nobody likes you as you wake up at 5 a.m. Nobody liked me this morning and say, hey, all of you woke up at 5 a.m. You get a like. All of you meditated, you get a like. All of you ran 3 miles, you get a like. Nobody gives me no likes. And nobody sees that. Right.
Yeah.
So to kind of, dig deeper to your question, I lost out on a deal that I was working on, a project, a $24 million project that I worked on for 6 months, right? And then somebody just came, with loads of money, bought the deal, $2 million more than and I was trying to pay for it. And
Wow.
this happened to me, I don't know, 2 days ago. And yeah, I was kind of sad for like 2 hours. And then the next morning I ran for 3 miles, and now I'm looking to do another deal for, probably a $30 million deal. So to go back to your question anyway, you have to realize, to get to where you should be living, your level in which you should be living your life, you need a different mindset. The enemy, or the aiders, as we love to call them in our generation, they're not out there on Instagram or Facebook or your friends or your family. The main person that is holding you back is in here. And for those that are listening to this on a podcast, I'm pointing to my brain, is inside of your head. It's you. It's you. So you have to start from your mindset, right? And I think obviously anybody that is listening to this has heard that before, Gary Vee on Instagram, like mindset, which is great. We have to start from how we think, how we look at the world, how we perceive the world. We have to be very much aware of what we tell ourselves, right? So when you tell yourself, oh, I don't know if I can do that, then your brain is like, oh yeah, you're right. Your brain is not going to say, no, you can't do this. Go ahead and do. No, your brain is never going to say that. Your brain is trying to prevent you from causing harm to yourself, right? So your brain doesn't understand entrepreneurship. Your brain is like, that's a lion, run, right? That's a big deal, run. You can't do it, right? So you have to be very aware of what's going on. But then I read a book, right, the 5 a.m. Club, and he also
Mhm.
talks about, your skill set, your heart set, your soul set, right? So you can wake up in the morning and listen to motivational videos from Eric Thomas, or Jim Rohn. I love Jim Rohn, or Liz Brown, or whoever on YouTube all day long. But how are you feeling in your soul? How are you feeling in your heart? What are you learning? Your skill set, right? What are you watching on YouTube? How long are you spending on Instagram? And people are thinking, what the heck is this guy talking about? How are you spending your most important resource? Time. What are you doing with your time? Show me your activity app on your iPhone. Are you exercising? Are you reducing the level of cortisol in your body, which is the stress hormone? Do you even know what that is? If you don't, go watch YouTube. Get off Instagram and go watch about that on YouTube. Like, those are the things that get you to that next level. Those that are crushing it in the world right now, they are so much in tuned with those four parts I just mentioned: mindset, soul set, heart set, skill set. Right? You can have the mindset, but if you don't know how to buy a building that is what $10 million. When I say how, I mean from a strategic perspective, meaning what is the strategy? How do you play chess? How do you move the pieces apart? How do you raise the equity? How do you talk to investors when you call them? But then from a tactical perspective, how do you do your due diligence? How do you go about closing? I mean, these are like real life skills that you have to attain to
Mhm.
make this happen. So yes, focus on mindset, but be acutely aware of everything else. If you're not in the right state of mind because you didn't wake up and exercise, or you didn't eat right, then you're not going to feel right. Then you can't talk to an investor, with a good tone. You're not yourself. So there's everything kind of works together. So be aware of those elements so you can use to your benefit.
Got it. Great tips. So thank you for sharing those. Again, I have a kind of similar question that I wanted to ask you, because a lot of people that I came across, they mentioning the book, which is the Rich Dad Poor Dad. The Pink Book. That was the kind of the entry point for me in the real estate business. But nobody actually talks about another book, which is far more greater than the Rich Dad Poor Dad, is the Bible. So can you talk about how reading the Bible or just studying it like help you and influence your business success?
Oh my goodness, you got me so fired up. Stop. Look, obviously we live in a world of 7 billion people. We all have different beliefs and, what we believe in Krishna, God, Allah. It doesn't matter. It does not matter what you believe. This is not I'm not trying to sell a particular religion. Obviously, I'm, very proud Christian, and, reading the Bible does help, right? So, but if you're not Christian, you're not born Christian, you live in India and you're listening to this, you have to understand that going through this world requires a being superior to you. That is the first philosophy. Like you thinking you just like living through this life all by yourself and everything just no, that you should be okay to understand that going through this journey requires a spiritual part of you that yearns, right, for support that your wife cannot give you, your brother, your sister, your uncle, your mom, your dad, right? So that's what we need to understand, and that also feeds back into that soul set, right? How are you feeling spiritually inside of you? Are you depressed? Which is fine. It's a big issue right now. Why are you depressed? Seek help. But also your spiritual part is so important. And to go back to your question, reading the Bible just helps. Like before you hit record on this podcast, we talked about dwelling, the name of our company, and I mentioned how God talks about in the Bible how you can dwell right in the house of God, and you can dwell in His peace and His grace, right? So even the name of our company, dwelling, comes from the Bible, right? And understanding that part, right? So somebody can say to me, we could have an atheist and say, "Hey, Ola, I appreciate what you're saying, but I'm an atheist. I don't believe in God." Fantastic. Okay, let's go there. The idea that you have a book that reassures you. That's why motivational books and motivational speakers make a ton of money. That's the whole concept. So yes, you might not believe in God, but the Bible is fantastic with story of success of people that persevered and pushed through. So even if you're an atheist, go check out the Bible and read the stories there, and you will find a pattern, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of how I would stop. Like people always think it has to be like, oh, I don't like religion, because of the organized, part of it, and they're taking advantage of people and all that. The Bible is free. It's online. You can get an app, and just read it and just see the stories in the Bible.
Yeah, exactly. So, like, I'm on the same page with you because I came across a lot of people who are Christian, Catholic, and they talking about the book, the great book, I mean, the Bible, about this kind of source of when it comes to the business advice. But again, at the same time, like, if you're going to open the book, like, what you're going to look for, that's what you're going to find. So, if you have the right questions in your head and you want those get answered, I mean, the book of, the Bible is definitely the place that somebody should check it out. Or if you mention somebody's an atheist or a Buddhist or whatever they're doing, like the fact, and of course it's a very short story, but my wife heard it. She's sitting not like far from me, but she will be like, you told it 1,000 times. But like the business partner of mine previously in a business told this like very interesting kind of short story. He was like, do you believe in God? And I said, yeah, of course. He said, that's good. I was like, why is this good? He said, because imagine if there is two people and one is a believer and one is not a believer. He said, if there's a goal in front of them and those people both are reaching that goal, he said, both people will reach that same goal, but the one who believes, he will reach it faster. And I was like, wow, that's kind of, but at the same time, look, it's just, it doesn't matter. I'm not talking about the Bible, so you have to believe in something. If it's yourself, if it's the God, you have to believe in something and find what that something is. So
Absolutely agree.
So talking about the deal, because again, maybe we can go through the numbers, the location, the first deal that you closed off, and kind of experience through your eyes what it was like.
Yeah, the very first deal, yeah, definitely. So, like I said, we got back and I read so many books about, how to get started in real estate, one of which was British Dad Poor Dad, and I narrowed in on multifamily, right? So there's obviously two parts to that, small multifamily and large multifamily. So obviously I started with the small multifamily, which is 2 to 4 units for those in Europe, in Ireland. Essentially, it's basically a house with usually 2 entry ways, right? So, because when I tell people, they're like, wait, I don't want to live with other people. I'm like, no, 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 no. You're not living with other people. They have their own door. They have their own kitchen. They have their own bathroom and toilet. Like, we don't, it's just 2 separate units. It's like a mini apartment, basically. So that was the first deal that we bought I like to say this, in a Class A area in Baltimore. And essentially, we bought this place. It was owned by a couple. We were living I guess 2 hours or so away. So they didn't really take care of the property. So we got a contractor to come in, change the flooring, take out the old bathtub. It was a massive bathtub. Took that out, renovated the old place, and then we moved into that space, right? And then when we had the tenants leave on the top, we moved there. We did the same thing. The property we still own it to today is doing fantastic. We kind of just having that in our estate, basically, for when we pass away. Yes, you should think about that as well, even though it's farther in the future, but we kind of have plans, and we plan our estates, my wife and I. So yeah, that was kind of like the first deal. And I want to kind of jump onto the next thing, if you don't mind, actually.
Sure.
So we did this, and we did this really well, which was that small multifamily deal. And I got a friend of mine in the US who said, hey, we should start flipping houses, and of course, anyone that has, seen HGTV in America, I don't know if you guys have in Ireland, you can go buy this house for like nothing and, put X amount of money, and then you do no work, and then you sell it for like $1 million and everything is great.
Yeah.
So I was like, I want to make money, why not? Let's do it. Even though, and I tell these stories for those that are out there, maybe you're 18, maybe you're 25 and you're just starting. The reason I'm being anecdotal and telling the stories, so when you see that in your life, you're like, "Ooh, I listened to that weird guy and he said the same. I don't want to make this mistake. That's why I'm telling the story." So I was doing well with the multifamily, and my plan was to keep doing that. I bought a two unit. Let me just buy another one, or buy a 3 unit or a 4 unit. I was like, no, I did a whole 180, and I started buying little tiny houses, trying to flip them. And the first deal we had was just very difficult because, I was not a flipper, right?
Yeah.
I didn't have the temperament for it. I didn't like it. I had to deal with contractors, and in contractors, the first 3 letters is the most important part. Con. I don't know if you got the joke. It was very interesting, right? So I did a couple of projects, and I was like, hey, I totally shouldn't have done this. It's not what I like, And then, but that really, really just took 2 years of my life, right? Because I did all these projects, and I was like, oh man, I should have just bought a 4 unit, and my portfolio today would be totally different, probably way higher, but it doesn't matter. So I kind of made that mistake. Not only did my personal portfolio suffered, dwelling also suffered, because I wasn't focused on that business because I was busy general contracting my project. So if you're out there, you find a niche, you have the temperament, very important, very, very important. If you have the natural flair for what you're doing, it's different to if you're forcing yourself to do a particular real estate strategy, right? Most people that start real estate in the US want to do either wholesaling or flipping. And the reason they do that is because for those 2 strategies, especially the wholesaling, people think they don't need money, but you always need money. Unfortunately, you need some kind of seed capital, even if it's like $2,000 or $1,000, or if you're in the UK or on Ireland, 1,000 euros or 1,000 pounds. You can't just start with no, everybody says no money. It's not true. You need something, right? But that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be successful if you don't have the skills, the right skills. You don't have the temperament, you don't like it, and you don't have a really strong purpose, kind of driving when you get punched in the face. And I get punched so many times, I don't even feel it anymore. So, be ready. If you really want to do something that's worth doing, well, just get ready to get punched, a lot. That's fine. Proverbially, obviously, not real punches.
Yeah. You'll get used to it, definitely. So I love the fact what you said. If you just stick to what works instead of like your story, just shifting from multifamily, which is like you already knew what's happening, you knew the process, and you kind of hit your head down, and you was going after it, and you moved away like 180 degrees into flipping, and that didn't work. So that's a great lesson for people. We just stick to what works and just keep going at it. So that's a solid device. And by the way, we have a HDTV also. It shows, but it's when you watch it on a TV. I mean, it's just like before and after shots. That's what you see. You don't see, as you said, the contractors, the issues, the foundation, like all the process. So it looks too easy, and that's where people fall into it. So, do you live currently in Texas? That's what I wanted to ask you.
I do, I do. So
Yeah,
we're in Houston, Texas. Yeah, actually west of Houston, in a place called Katy. It's beautiful. It's just so nice. Like I tell everyone, like I was telling my sister in Milton Keynes in the UK, I was like, you need to move to America. It's so beautiful. I love it.
got it. So how and why have you decided to make that decision to move to Texas?
Great question. So, we had our business in Baltimore, but, our market of interest is really Texas, right? So, my partners and I, we have property here in Houston and in Texas. So, the premise of our move was to actually, kind of come to Texas and really stick the dwelling flag, really deep down in the ground, and we can really grow our business. But more importantly, to vertically integrate the firm. I'm not sure if you know what that term is for our listeners as well. It's basically kind of like having all the functions, the business, the lines of business in one, right? So
Mm.
property management, development, and investment. So which is kind of what we do for the most part. So that's kind of why I mentioned the $24 million project that I just missed. So that's one of the development projects that we're looking at. After this call, I've got to go look at a land not far from here. So we're kind of moving into that space. That's the whole purpose of really nothing beats being on ground and meeting people. And I was going to say shaking hands, probably not right
Mhm.
now, but
Shaking
meeting people,
elbows, shaking elbows.
elbows, yes.
Yeah.
So nothing beats that.
Got it. So you currently have 264 units in Texas. So when you came to the Texas, I mean, that was how long ago?
And that was just before the lockdown. We can
Oh,
talk
okay.
about that as well.
Got it. So have you looked at the market because some people might be saying like, look, like Texas is like saturated when it comes to multifamily syndicators and there's not enough property. So I mean, what type of due diligence have you done? And I think your kind of story would give a lot of people a lot of great advice because maybe somebody who's in New York, upstate New York, and there is no deals and they're looking to move to another state, maybe right now, maybe in the future, and kind of they're looking where to move in so they can invest and maybe stay in that market. So what type of decisions, what type of questions maybe you ask yourself and your wife before you made that move?
Yeah, I mean, in the syndication space, it's a small world. We know each other, most of us.
Hmm.
Now there's kind of this kind of a big jump of interest in multifamily for obvious reasons. I
Yeah.
mean, we've known this for years, but now a lot of people know. I mean, with the proliferation of the internet and people getting more access to information and data, it's just a no-brainer. I mean, you buy an apartment and in a few years you can make millions. So there's a reason why a lot of people are kind of coming into this space. That said, though, we know the strengths that we have in the marketplace. In this game, you have to really understand broker relationships. You have to really
Hmm.
understand the debt markets, like how you can source debt. You have to understand on development side. You have to understand general contracting and how you get the best general contractors. You have to understand marketing. You have to understand how to raise capital. So the reason I'm mentioning those is that's what sets us apart. You're always going to have a bunch of folks in the market. Yes, right now at this point, we're not really seeing kind of a big delta in the asking price from sellers. Even though we're in a global pandemic, the cap rates are still compressing. So things are looking pretty, difficult from a deal sourcing perspective. But that said, when I speak to veterans in this game, people have been saying that for years. There are no deals. It's hard. These deals are not penciling out. But we still try to. I mean, yes, that is true. That is true. But then there are still deals that you can find and get creative with. The deal that I mentioned that we just lost out on was an adaptive reuse deal, where we're going to buy an office building and basically reposition it into a multifamily. Because obviously, anyone listening to this now, it's October 2020. People are not going to the office right now. So some of the office buildings are empty. So we're trying to buy those and turn those around to multifamily. Now, not everybody can do that. Not everybody should do that. But if you have a secret recipe and a combination of how to make that happen from kind of inception of the deal all the way to ground opening, if you're really good at putting the pieces together, and believe me, it's brain damaging work. It's not for everyone. I know, I've just done it.
Got it. So when it comes to the Texas itself, I mean, are you planning to invest out of state into other states as well in the future?
No, right now we're really focused on kind of Houston and 4 or 5 hour 4 or 5 hours drive radius. It's kind of where we like. Excluding Austin and DFW, Dallas, Fort Worth, for those not in the US. So that's kind of our focus right now, and we're just really trying to narrow. We're not trying to take over the world. We don't believe in that. We just kind of want to narrow and get really community centric.
Makes sense. So what's when it comes to the property locations, I mean, what type of data are you looking at to make sure that you're making good, acquisition decisions?
Yeah, we look at a lot of things, rent, right? We are just joking with one of my partners this morning. We're not trying to build ultra luxury apartments, with, resort style infinity pools with rents that people can't afford. That's just not our space, right? So we look at rent, we look at absorption rate, we look at the the household incomes in the area, but more importantly, folks might not know this, we also look at what we call DDAs, difficult to develop areas, QCTs, qualified census tracts, and we also look at specific zones within the city where you can get what we call city incentives, basically public subsidy. So those are kind of the things that we look at. This is all kind of development mixed with investments, just for anyone hearing. But that's obviously where our business is at this point. So those are kind of the things we look at. Obviously, we look at vacancy, vacancy rates and things like that. But for us, we're really kind of edging towards that development side for now, as the market kind of gets up a little bit. There's a lot of signs that delinquencies are getting up because of some of the forbearances we're seeing in the markets, because of the unfortunate impact of COVID-19. So we're just kind of making sure that we're not getting too aggressive right now.
Okay, got it. So talking about deals itself, I mean, how many deals you have come through on your table? I mean, is there many deals you have in the pipeline, and what type of deals are you looking for? Like closing this year?
Yeah, so we're obviously on track to close on the deal I just mentioned. But right now, I think it's a split between 80 investment deals and then 20% land deals, land or structure. Sometimes they'll have like a little tiny structure on it, or just a pure land play. So that's kind of like the split: 80% investment sales and then 20 land. In terms of the frequency, I think I got like 4 deals in my inbox right now that is considered inboxed on our deal pipeline. So we do get deals. I had to go look at a deal the other time that it was about to be sold on a courthouse steps, which was cancelled, unfortunately. So that there are deals out there, but of course, I really think where the rubber hits the road is how can you make these deals pencil out? How creative can you get? What are you spotting that maybe your competition isn't seeing? It's kind of really where the rubber hits the road.
Got it. So how do you actually fund those deals? I mean, how do you come across the deals? Because you mentioned about the brokers. Is that the only way that you're able to source deals, or you have any strategies that are different?
Yeah, I mean, mainly brokers. In at Dwelling, we have tried, to kind of reach out to sellers in the past. We've done that pretty successfully, actually. But I feel like the amount of effort, to get those deals is no child's play. So now that I'm actually in Texas, I just went to have coffee with a broker yesterday. So we actually meeting these people, talking to them in person, going to their offices. They're coming to my office here, so it's just a different dynamic. So for us, we don't really have to be in Maryland trying to call property owners in Texas or in California. So now that we actually kind of impulse, with some of these brokers, it makes things a lot easier.
Got it. So one of the part of the syndication business is, raising capital. So maybe you can talk about that process. I mean, how you were able, maybe first of all, to kind of build this network of accredited investors to be able to invest with you.
Oh wow, you're asking for the secret sauce.
Oh,
Yeah, so that's a
yeah.
that yeah, that's a big part, right? And I think for raising equity, it's really figuring out, like, I think for those that are looking to start, I think where you want to focus on is family and friends. Now, when I say that, most times, and I know this, right? I moved from the UK to the United States. I didn't have a lot of friends, I didn't have enough family. So, that's definitely not as easy as it's said, but you can start there. And don't think your uncle, Uncle Joe doesn't have any money because he drives a, 1999 Nissan or whatever. He probably has more money than your uncle that drives a Range Rover. So I just want to tell folks that are listening that so don't look at Uncle Joe because it doesn't look rich, right? So speak to your family members and your friends and kind of tell them what you're doing. You need to kind of reposition yourself. So that's number one. That's one way you can raise money. Another thing is, look for a way to be a master, right, of content in your field that you enjoy. It has to be something. Don't start posting on Facebook and like, hey, I'm doing real estate, or if you're in the UK, I'm doing property investing, and then 3 days later you stop, right? Or don't start a YouTube channel that you're not going to be able to do, right? Our podcast has been going, close to over 100 and I don't know, probably 90 or maybe 180 podcasts now on the Dwelling Show, and we're still going, right? Consistency is so key, right? So just make sure that whatever platform you choose to distribute or disseminate content, you are able to keep that going for as long as possible, right? Because consistency is also part of being a successful investor. So if it's blog writing, do that. If you're a natural writer, and if you like talking, set up a podcast, right? But you need a thought leadership platform, and also social media, right? Like try to engage, right? Try to be, somebody of value, right? Don't be like sleazy. There's a lot of sleazy people out there these days on like social media. It's so sleazy. Like you don't have to show like bunches of cash, or like you don't have to show the yellow car in the background with the beautiful girl. It's really not necessary because it just makes you look amateurish, right? So but just provide value and engage people, motivate, inspire, show people what you're doing. Don't show off.
Yeah, that's a solid advice when it comes to social media promotion, right? So, again, one thing is the part of your entire kind of journey and the process of building the business is giving back. So, can you talk about One House Pledge? I mean, and how do you help with that company? Give an impact to the other people in a great way.
Yeah, I mean, it's still something we're still striving to do, right? It's not something that is easy, but basically the idea is, on the Maslow hierarchy of needs, anybody with psychology background would know that housing, right, shelter is really at the bottom, right? So if we can give a house to a family, and just give it to them mortgage free, and they don't have to pay any mortgage on it, that's really the goal. And if we can do that every Christmas, it's kind of what we're striving for. So One House Pledge is an initiative that we're striving to build here at Dwelling. And then the Vacay Pledge, which you mentioned, is really, my wife, like I said, is from the Philippines. She was born in the Philippines. Is, we're going back to, corners of the world and really just helping people and just showing them love, and just giving back, in whatever ways we can. I'm really big on information. I really want to get to a place where, after I get all these billions, I can just really give it all back, or millions, whatever it is, but give it back in form of not just a handout, right? But giving it back in form of a way kids can access information, right? I'm looking at a deal for example, I'm looking at a deal right now, and it's a land deal, but apparently it's been a solid waste landfill, right? And I was like, oh, let me research this. And I just went to YouTube and I was inundated with solid waste, land information and what solid waste is and how it's covered, and they use clay and a soil membrane, and I learned that within 10 minutes. right? My parents in 1980 could not do that, right? So if we could give information, laptops, computers, and, access to the internet, to a kid in Burma or to a kid in Lagos, right? I mean, that will radically change the world, right? So for folks like me, that's what I care about. That's what I'm trying to figure out to do. But this sounds all great. Like, I can talk to you about this all day long, but I can't do it without money, right? So that's why, guys like me are trying to build wealth through real estate, and then we can give it back. And that's how we leave a legacy, and then we pass on, and then the next generation takes it off from where we left it.
Got it, got it, got it. So that's awesome. Again, it's a great cause that you're working on, and I love the fact that you said that you cannot feed somebody who's starving from an empty plate. So it takes focus and dedication and a lot of persistence and hard work to actually acquire wealth. Which is a tough thing to do. I mean, if it will be easy, everybody would be wealthy, right? But I love the fact what you said. If you're looking to help those type of people, because I mean, personally, probably came across people like I talk with people from India a lot of time, and I mean, those people are super smart. Again, some of those people live in really tough conditions, and kind of the best way out for them is education. So if you can help those type of people who are living in those type of countries, I mean, there's a lot of great potential coming from those type of people. So is that could be again,
Absolutely.
you kind of answered that question, but I would like to kind of, I think you kind of a little bit scratched the surface. So if I will try to dig deeper a little bit on that, and which is the legacy part. Again, you're meeting a lot of people, like being on a podcast like this one, which I'm grateful for. Networking with people, brokers, like doing whatever's possible for you just to reach more people and spread the awareness about multifamily investing, all the good stuff. But what is like one thing that you always want people to remember about you when you meet them?
The way they feel after I've left them. That is so crucial. Like, that is so important because, every time we meet somebody else, there's an exchange of energy, whether we realize it or not. Right. So for me, I want people to understand that, there is more we can do together. Right. And then our meeting is just not superficial, right? So when I meet people, I try to talk about the things that are actually important. I try to inspire and motivate them, right, in every little way I can, because that's just natural for me. I'm sure you could say that from our conversation right here. So for me is, how would this person feel after we've departed, after we've left? So for me, that's really important, and I want them to feel a place of warmth, a place of increased energy, and an elevated sense of self, right? So I think for me that's more important than anything else.
I do agree with you. And I think a lot of people will feel exactly the same way as you described today, because I mean, even though they're watching this via, YouTube or listening on iTunes, I mean, you can still feel what people like, what the person intentions are. And again, your intentions are great. You want to help and impact people in a great way, because I mean, especially during these times, there's a lot of uncertainty and people are confused what's going to happen. So if you just spread that, I mean, you know, it's an awesome thing. So, all I really appreciate you for being today on the show. I mean, a lot of wealth of knowledge, experience, journey, personal journey, belief system, having that in place. How do you conduct business, help people, building network? I mean, all these great pieces for people to take away today. So I'm sure a lot of people who's watching, they took a lot of great tips for you. So I thank you for that.
Thank you. I really
Oh,
appreciate you.
listen, guys and girls, just one thing that I wanted to ask you. If you shared this episode with a friend of yours, you know that one friend that you always have who always talks about real estate investing, he wants to get involved or she wants to get involved, but never pulls the trigger. This could be a great episode for that person, because, again, as I mentioned, he will find all those great pieces that will give him inspiration and the knowledge to pull the trigger and start building his personal or her personal business. So, Ola, again, I appreciate you today for being on the show and spending this quality time. And guys and girls, as always, I'm going to see you in the next episode. Thank you for watching.